Podcasting is more than just talking, it's listening. BSing with Bob Schmidt.
Real, raw, uneffing believable author of UnF Yourself, Gary John Bishop, joining me on the BSing with Bob podcast. Gary, first of all, thanks for spending some time with me today. I appreciate it. Why did you decide to name your book UnF Yourself?
That's a good question. First of all, Bob, thanks for having me on your show. Most people think I chose that title because it's kind of, it's a little sensational. But it really isn't, as you can hear by my accent, I'm originally from Scotland. And in my little neck of Scotland, we tend to use that word pretty colourfully. We tend to use it to really emphasize something, or when something's pretty serious, we tend to use that word. So the book is about people's lives, people's real lives, not some concept of the life, not some nebulous ideal of someone's life, but rather the reality of living a life. And I think that's a pretty serious subject. So I chose that title to kind of signify and for people to identify with that this is a serious subject and it's something they should pay attention to.
Do you think that most people are living their lives, Gary, or not?
No, I think we're all asleep. I think we're all asleep at the wheel. I think there's moments of clarity. I think we spend our life convincing ourselves about what we can't do and then settling for what we think we can. And then occasionally it takes some kind of outside influence to kind of jolt us into a temporary state of alertness that we might intervene in the quality of our lives. And, I'm arrogant enough to consider that for many people, I might be that guy.
What was your point where you're like, I get it?
Yeah, probably this morning, last night, yesterday, last week. I mean, every day I'm catching myself drifting into the kind of automatic state that I could be in. So it's never a done deal. I don't think there's a point in anybody's life, Bob, where you're sitting there with your legs crossed, breathing deeply, in touch with the universe, and, wallowing in a state of kind of karma. The reality is, you're constantly dealing with yourself, and you're constantly dealing with some preformed judgments and opinions that are shaping the pathway of your future. And the more aware you are, the more work you do on yourself, the more you can catch yourself, the more you'll actually be able to do something about that future. But again, this is not only what I do for a living. I imbue myself with this kind of thinking and work. Because I'm committed to expressing myself in whole new ways, and it takes something. It is work.
Well, how do we get that BS out of our lives? Because my show's called BS, and I know that you say your BS-free self-empowerment guide. But how do you get rid of all that crap that's in your lives? Because we all have it. We all got our baggage. We all got our day-to-day BS that we're carrying around with us. Some of us showing it, some of us just letting it be there.
Well, one of the worst things you can do is interact with your BS, right? The worst thing you can do is try and fix it. So I'll give you an example. People might say, I've got an anger problem, so let me get to work on my anger. Now you're just making your life about anger. So it's actually the opposite for human beings. Human beings don't have the capacity to fix things, because all you'll do is fill yourself up with that which you're trying to fix. And you'll have episodes of fixed, not fixed, fixed, not fixed, fixed, not fixed. And in this example, your life's about anger. I would say to people, well, why don't you start building a habit for joy? Why don't you start building a habit for love? Why don't you start building a habit for self-expression? Why don't you start building a habit for taking new, bold actions? Why don't you start building a habit for doing that thing you've been resisting? Rather than trying to work on some experience of yourself or some feeling that you're out to have, why don't you get out of your skin a little bit and start to introduce some whole new ways for you to act, rather than fix something that you think doesn't work?
That's pretty deep there, Gary, actually. What's the difference between you and somebody else that writes some self-help book or, speaking on the same thing?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not a motivation guy. A motivation guy is just, they just tell you to freaking do it. There is a kind of honesty in that, but it doesn't really give me much. So I take a pretty unique approach, and people might hear when I say I take a unique approach, I'm not delivering some new message. What I'm talking about is some pretty ancient philosophy and Stoic philosophy and existentialism and ontology and phenomenology. It's a pretty well-informed point of view that I take. And what's unique about the point of view that I take is my delivery. So I can reach for some pretty old philosophies, but deliver them to people in a way that resonates, that rings a bell, like it makes sense to them. And, I tell people, if you read the book, there'll be pretty significant points in that book where you really experience that I'm talking to you. And that's pretty much my style. I've managed to work out myself enough that I can identify what it is most of us deal with, and to be able to speak to those in a way that people really feel like they're being gotten, and that they can do something about it now that this thing is perhaps a lot more simpler than they had considered.
Honestly, paging through the book, I haven't had a chance to sit down and read it because a friend of mine loaned me the copy that I have here. But the different passages that I picked out, I'm like, oh my God, Gary's writing this to me, because on page 12, the way we talk doesn't only affect us in the moment, it can seep into our subconsciousness and become internalized. And I think that I do that all the time, and I'm guessing that other people that are listening right now do the same thing.
Yeah, your reality isn't real. I know that sounds like something of the Matrix, but your reality isn't real. There is a reality. There's on a cold day, if you go outside, you'll have a physical experience of that coldness. But then what will fall out your mouth is your opinion of that coldness. And your opinion of that coldness and that coldness for you as a human being are the same thing. And so we live our life in the crossroads of our opinions and our reality, but somehow our opinions and our reality get so intertwined and collapsed, we can't separate them. So, people aren't, when people wake up on a Monday morning, they're not dreading Monday. They're dreading their opinion of Monday. It's not Monday. Monday's not doing anything. Monday's just Monday. And by the way, how you know it's not Monday is that some people like a Monday. So it's not a Monday doing it to you, because if it was Monday doing it to you, it'd be doing it to all of us.
Right.
So we live in this no reality that really seems, real. I mean, it's really real. Like, no, my job really is this way, or I really am this way, or they really are that way, or my parents or my siblings, and then I interact with people in terms of what I've kind of figured out about them, and then I live my life just gathering evidence for what I figured out. And instead of questioning yourself and really questioning, well, where did I come to that conclusion? Or how come I don't like that person, but this other person does seem to like them? What are they seeing that I don't see? And it's about breaking down, as I like to say, Bob, I hear people use the term self-limiting beliefs, okay?
Mm-hmm. Right.
You don't know what your own self-limiting beliefs are. You believe them. It doesn't seem like a self-limiting belief. It seems like, no, that's not a self-limiting belief. That's true. I'm not smart enough. That's not a self-limiting belief. I'm really not smart. I never went to school. I didn't. Or, people don't listen to me. No, really, that's not a self-limiting belief. That's how it is. Right? So you're so in your own self-limiting beliefs, and that's one of the things that I really wrote the book to do with people, is to start to intervene and jar them awake to some of the stuff that they tell themselves, but it doesn't seem like I'm just telling myself this thing. It seems like this thing that I'm telling myself is real. And I want people to break out of that. I want people to get their miracle of being, that they have a fantastic capacity for producing the most amazing results. Really, beyond what you ever thought was possible for yourself. If you would only give yourself to the thing rather than giving yourself to the thing and shaping it by what you currently believe or think or see.
So we're basically just limiting ourselves, and that's where the title UnF Yourself comes from.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have self-limiting beliefs. You are self-limiting beliefs. It's in everything you do. I mean, look, if you ask the average person about what they think they're going to make next year, and really, like, just ask them to get real about it, how much you think you're going to make? And they'll tell you the number, if it's $40,000 or $50,000. And I say, well, why isn't it $480,000? They'll have a nosebleed because they can't even imagine life at that number.
Right.
And and by the way, your finances are a great example of your self-limiting beliefs. Now, it's not a problem. You make 40 grand or 50 grand. You know, I mean, that's 20 grand or 30 grand, whatever you make. You know, it's a life. We make a living. We do what we can do. But you'll notice, like, if my life is about making, say, $40,000, I'm constantly dealing with $40,000 problems. So every day of my life, I'm solving those $40,000 problems. I'm giving my attention to solving $40,000 problems. I think all of that's real. I don't realize that that's where I located myself. I put myself into the game of 40 grand. And then if I gave it real thinking, it started to interrupt the drift of myself. I might realize that I could be playing a $120,000 a year game. No, that's just finances, but that could be anywhere in life. So, I often say to people, you have no idea who you are. And I really mean that. Like, and I'm not saying I know who you are. But what I will say to people, including my clients, is I have a better sense of who you are, like a potential, than you do. In fact, I mostly with my clients argue for their potential, and they argue for why they can't, which is kind of absurdity, but that's how it is.
Well, it's all self-doubting. And well, I think that when you ask somebody how much they're going to make, and they think, okay, $100,000, and then you're like, why aren't you going for $1 million? And it's a possibility, but I really believe it's, like you said, it's your belief that that's your limit. And if you don't make that limit, then I think that a lot of people get depressed. Well, Gary said I'd be able to make $1 million. He only made $500,000 this year. Well, I lost. Right. I failed at that. And it's about looking past that failure, perhaps.
Well, I think you got to realize you're not built for satisfaction. So as a being, you're not wired to be satisfied. And I'm not just saying that to somebody or you as an individual, Bob. I'm saying if you look at human beings in general terms, as a group, we've never been satisfied with what we had. How do we know that? Because we're still progressing. And why are we still progressing? We're still progressing because we don't think what we have is what we really want. So we're in pursuit of something as a group. And as individuals, we live in pursuit. So I'm kind of like you, like I, like everybody else, we're wired to pursue some day in the future when this is going to turn out. Except what you're doing right now was something you were pursuing back then that you were sure when you got here it was going to turn out. Yet this ain't it either. And so it's a kind of fruitless exchange, really. So one of the things that I say to people is, rather than looking at a day in the future when you can accomplish something, and when I say accomplish something, I really mean like be left in a space where you're satisfied and happy with yourself and you're essentially good with life. I say to people, well, if you actually look at your life right now in this moment, like right now in this moment, what would be something you could express in life right now? Like some aspect of yourself that you could express right now in this life that would inspire you or give you joy. And it's a kind of challenging thing to take on, but I say to people, life is more like an experiment than a journey. It's more like an opportunity for you to play with this thing you've been given. And yet, with the way we're wired, we tend to not experiment with it, but rather form it, shape it, and solidify it and live life as that entity. And I'm way more interested in people getting outside of themselves like that.
Do you think that most of us are kind of just complacent and just kind of we're just going through life in autopilot and just dealing with the stuff that's kind of thrown at us?
I don't care the degree of success you've had. I've coached people that on the face of it, you would say, oh, that's a very successful person. I mean, they made multi-million dollars and they've got a house in, the Seychelles and, I mean, just live great lives, you would think, right? Yet, even with those people, there's something about themselves that are out to fix or change that this success never fixes nor changes. So, yeah, I mean, latest studies in neuroscience say we're about 95% unconscious. So, I mean, look, if you drive to work, most people don't even remember the journey. And that's you driving like a half ton of metal. You can't even remember, like, well, did I miss my turn? I can't. Or what you did last Thursday, or what you had for breakfast this morning. Why? Because we're on autopilot. We are on autopilot. And I'm including, by the way, people who would say they're very conscious. I'm not just saying this to the people who, yeah, I think I'm on autopilot. I'm saying this to those that say, no, I'm not on autopilot. Here's what I'm saying. You're on autopilot. You're asleep at the wheel. And how you know you're asleep at the wheel is because your life is filled with things that you'd rather were different. It could be your finances, your body, your family, your relationships. And all you've done is maneuver them and manipulate them in such a way that you can live with them. But you're not like expressing yourself and diving into them and stretching them. And, you know, as I like to say, you know, you have the life that you're willing to put up with. And unfortunately, as a group of people, we're willing to put up with quite a lot of BS.
Yeah. How do we go about living life then?
Well, I mean, as I said, I view life as an experiment, and I'm interested in, you know, stretching the limits of this bag of skin and bones. I don't mean by jumping in aeroplanes. I mean by expressing things that I typically resist. So, you know, like things like acceptance and forgiveness and vulnerability and expressing my love and being confident and being bold and being adventurous and taking on things that I don't think I can do, which is one of my guiding lights in life is I'm not interested in what I can do. I'm way more interested in what I think I can. So I invariably give those things a go, like writing a book. Right? I mean, I didn't think I could write a book, but not only did I write a book, but it's a bestseller. And I, you know, like my life is filled with those kind of episodes where I allowed myself to dwell in the uncertainty of not knowing whether I can do it while still taking the actions and expressing myself and doing those things and then completely surprising myself. I'm not afraid of failing, Bob. I'm not afraid of falling on my face. It doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless when I fail. I mean, it's meaningless when I win, but it's nice when I win. But you know, I'm committed that when I eventually do exit this earth, whether that be tomorrow or 50 years from now, that I exit it and say I gave it all I had. But I'm not going to look back and say, well, maybe I should have moved to LA, or I should have done this or done that, or maybe I should have bought that car. No, I'm going all out. I'm like, no, I'm going to spend the currency of youth rather than save it for a day in the future when it's no longer of any use to me.
Again, more deep. That's just real. Explain to me, Gary, a failure that you've had that changed your life.
Yeah, but shit. I mean, this week or so I could, if I look at like some of the kind of critical ones for myself, so that I thought were turning points in my life. So in 2007, I, like many people, hit the wall financially. And there was a big, you know, stock market crash and the housing crisis, and my house like halved overnight. I lost my business in the space of a day, a single day. My whole business just collapsed. And then I'd gone from like doing really well in this 6-figure income to nothing in 24 hours. And I had been the kind of businessman at that time where I poured everything that I had into my business. So when it had nothing, I had nothing. And, you know, I was faced with bankruptcy, you know, and I actually started the process. I'm going to declare bankruptcy. I'm going to move out of this house. And then I had this, you know, like a personal crucible where I thought, you know, this doesn't. And by the way, I know a lot of people declare bankruptcy and have to, and I get it, and I have all the respect and compassion for those people. But how that was for me at that time was, listen, I got any debt with these people, these credit card companies, this mortgage company, all of this stuff. I have no way to pay them back, like none. And I'm going to deal with this with integrity. So I got into communication with all of them. And I said, look, I've lost my business. It's going to take me some time. I don't know what I'm going to do. I literally do not know what I'm going to do. I have no degree. You know, I got a Scottish accent. That's about it. And And I said, but, I'm requesting that you give me the time to work this out for you and I to come to some agreement to work my way out of this. Mm-hmm. And they all said yes. They all said, all right, let's do it. And I took a job, and I was getting paid a third of what I made before. And I worked my way out of it, and I honored my debts. And it was life-changing for me. I realized that I was no longer a circumstantial human being, and that I could manipulate circumstances to have them go my way. It wasn't the other way around. And from that point forward, I've really just been someone who, when I look at things, my concern is, how am I going to do it? I mean, I think about how it could fail, and I definitely embrace all of those thoughts and ideas. But when I give my word to something that I'm going to do it, I just keep handling whatever I need to handle until it's done, period, all the time, every time. And that stood me in good stead for a number of years now.
I wish more people were that way, actually. Do you think your upbringing brought you to that point, Gary?
I don't think so. There's a lot of crap from back then that gets in the way. I think it was a combination of maybe some aspects of that, some aspects of what I learned along the way in terms of mistakes. And then once I hit my late 30s in life, I started to do personal growth work. I started to get into the whole idea of understanding myself, but not so that I could spend my life picking fluff at my belly button and telling people what I found. but rather from if I understand myself better in this area of my life, what would that then free me up to do? And that's probably my big criticism of this whole self-help thing. I don't think it always gives people access to doing something else. I think it just kind of placates them or sterilizes them to just, be okay with the kind of swamp they're in.
I want to jump in and ask a question on that because, you brought up a good point because there are a ton of self-help books out there. There's a ton of people that read self-help books, that listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos and all about being a better me, all about making the best me that I can. They read all this stuff, they take all this stuff in, and they don't do anything with it.
Right. And that's kind of like how we are as human beings. We end up buying books looking for the new thing, like somehow that new thing will wake something up with us. And that thing that's now lit up will intervene with me. And that doesn't happen enough for it to be a reliable methodology for getting your life on track. I've got a problem with the whole self-help thing, actually, right? I mean, I'm kind of like the anti-self-help guy. I'm like the self-wake the hell up kind of guy, right? And I'll look at a lot of, and I'd say this thing in quotes, experts in the self-help field. And it's invariably people that are talking from something that happened in their life. And what I find is if you talk to people about some of the great things they did in their life, they're not at the source of it. They're not. There's what they think made that happen, and then so they'll write a book about that. But if I talk to them, they get surprised and they find out what actually made that happen was something they didn't think was at play. So in theory, a lot of those books are more like a Monday morning quarterbacking session of a time in the author's life. The alternatives are written by usually like psychologists who just give you a psychological perspective of what it is to be a human being, which again, basically all I'm going to get from that book is some kind of category that I belong to, some kind of self-diagnosis. I don't know if it opens the door to anything. I mean, it might, but I don't know. It never did with me. And what I want to do with people is, I'm going to kind of inform you. I'm going to give you the world of how come we be the way we be in life. But then I'm also going to make it so real for you that you're going to be compelled to do something when that book closes. Like, you can't live with what I just told you. You can't undiscover what you just discovered about yourself. And you can no longer sit in that chair because you know exactly what you're doing to yourself in your life, and you are at the source of it. So I I'm not a fan of self-help. I'm a big fan of self-growth. I'm a big fan of personal growth and development. And I think everybody, if you're not working on yourself, then you've got your eye on the wrong stuff. You got to work on yourself. You got to. It's okay to be filled with hope and positivity and all of that kind of stuff. That doesn't exclude you from doing work on yourself. It's your duty as a human being to understand the profundity of your own machinery and to be at the source of it in such a way that you can manipulate it to your own good.
So do you regularly try to UnF yourself?
Yeah, I speak from, I'm my biggest guinea pig, I work probably 14 or 16 hours a day. It includes like building new strategies or coming up with new ideas, or, I'll contemplate something. I'll spend 6 months contemplating something, just to try and understand it. One of the things that I was thinking about recently was this thing called confidence. And I noticed like a lot of people use that word to describe why they don't do things in life. Like, I don't have confidence. Like, I could have it. And if you were to ask yourself, like, people say stuff like, I don't have confidence, and then they just go on and do what they're doing. But they haven't even thought about it. Like, well, where is it located? Is there a confidence organ that I could perhaps get transplanted into my body? Perhaps there's a trigger for confidence. And yeah, I know that trigger. It's usually a couple of martinis. That'll trigger your confidence.
Right.
But ultimately, like, well, what is it? If you think about it enough, you'll see, and I'm using this as an example of kind of what I do. If you think about confidence enough, you'll see that confidence is an experience of yourself that arises when you look at what you're about to do and you can see something familiar in it. So when you look at what you're about to do and there's familiarity there, you'll experience something called confidence. If you look at something and it's not familiar and it's unknown and uncertain, you will not experience confidence about that thing. There's got to be something there for you that you can identify with that would then allow you to experience this thing called confidence. So people point themselves towards situations and circumstances where they can experience that confidence that would then allow them to step into it. The problem with that is, if you identify something with what you're about to do, that means you've either done it or saw somebody else do it, which means you're not doing anything new. You'll never do anything new if what you're looking for is confidence. Confidence is an indicator of the familiar. So one might consider, maybe I should be doing the things that I'm totally uncertain about, unfamiliar with, and exposing myself and giving myself to mastering those things.
Is it possible to ever master any of that stuff?
I don't think mastery's a destination, Bob. I think it's a place you come from.
Okay.
I think you ask, if you ever get stuck in life, or rather when you get stuck in life, you might ask yourself, well, if I was going to be masterful with this thing, what would I do? You would ask yourself the kind of question that would demand an answer from you. So if you're somebody who procrastinates and you lie on the sofa and you watch Hulu all night, and you know you should be getting that work done, so you relate to yourself like a procrastinator, again, like there's some kind of procrastination organ within you, and you start looking up books and, I might have seasonal adjustment syndrome disease, whatever. I think that's what's going on with me. I think it's got something to do with my dad being an asshole when I was a kid. And that's why I'm watching Hulu tonight. Or you might ask yourself, like, all right, here I am laying on the sofa. I say I'm committed to writing a book or being a musician or being a poet or an artist or being financially successful. If I really am committed to that, what would a master do right now? And you would start to be and act in the ways that a master would, because a master is always in pursuit of mastery, but not like to get there, but actually to have that be a way of life.
Who is Gary John Bishop?
I like to call him, somebody once told me that I'm the urban philosopher, which everybody's a philosopher, by the way. It's not some. It's not. A philosophy is just somebody who's willing to look at life and offer some kind of opinion about it. So everybody's a philosopher. So who I like to position myself as an everyman, an everyday kind of guy. I spend a lot of time thinking and studying and reading, but I've given my life to making a difference for people. What people, anybody, all people. I don't care, and I'm going to use my life up for that. I'm going to die doing that. And I whatever little I am able to pull together and offer people that shakes them free from that chain of mediocrity and sameness, and I'm going to keep doing that and keep banging away at that doorway for people. Because this is a challenging time to be a human being, and any little bit of breathing space you can get as a human being, you should take it. And there are people out there who do good things and offer the kind of stuff to people that does make a difference. And, I'm committed to being one of those human beings for other human beings.
On your website, I see that you have clients that are professional sports stars and corporate stars as well. What's the difference between a corporate star and a sports star?
I mean, there's a fundamental sameness to them. So it's like this kind of commitment to something. And it's an all-consuming commitment. Especially, it grows even within those particular domains. So even if you look at sports, some of the categories that I've coached people in, like basketball or NHL, I don't coach them in the sport. I coach them in who they are in the sport. But they, even within the particular sport, it starts to separate. Like the passion gets bigger with some of them. And the ones who want to accomplish and get to those next levels, that's often what they come to me for. And it's the same in those, in those big corporations, right? There's a lot of really talented, a lot of really successful, very analytical human beings who operate in that paradigm of business. But it's a very isolated game. Business is very lonely. And it's a game that doesn't allow you to get in touch with your full humanity. It's kind of like you're very limited in your expression in that part of society, because it's very, very, very cutthroat. And in many ways goes against what it is to be a human being. To be a human being is to connect with other human beings. But in business, for example, there's this kind of real distrust of connection. Like, should I do it? Should I not do it? What's in it for them? What's in it for me? And so I work with people to kind of expand their capacity for not only being effective at what they do, but expand their capacity for being effective with who they are.
Do they want the same thing? Do the sports stars and corporate stars want the same thing?
Yeah, they want the same thing that you want. They want the same thing. Like everybody is living their life doing things that they believe will leave them in a certain way. The French existentialist Jean-Paul Sartre, he said, I'm paraphrasing because he was a lot smarter than me, but people live lives of pursuit. So we're pursuing something. And for us, it's at some level, it's something called being happy. Or certainly like, yeah, I'm going to get a big house because when I get that big house, then I'll be happy or satisfied or whatever that thing is. But I'll be left in some state of satisfaction or bliss. And we get so wrapped up in our lives that we forget that's why we're doing it. We go down tunnels. And so, but I don't care whether you're, an NHL player or you're somebody who, like, you're a stay-at-home dad. Ultimately, your life is about that pursuit of that state. So, it might be, well, if I'm making a few more bucks this month and, and I get a $200 bonus, then I'll get that thing. that'll be good. Or you go in a department store and you're like, yeah, so I'm going to buy those shoes. I don't have the money, but I'm getting those shoes. Why would I do that? Because I really believe in my heart of hearts that once I buy them, I'll be better off. Like, I will feel better. And the same with a car and the vacation and the body and the bank balance. And like, one of these days, when it all comes together for me, I'll be good. But anybody who's done all those things would tell you the problem with all of that is you do all those things and then you realize that you're still you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hit that point, you really are in it. I mean, you're screwed. So if you look right now in the news, there's a lot of stuff in the news about sexual harassment and people just acting in ways that are completely inappropriate and totally lack integrity. And you would ask yourself, why the hell would you do that? I mean, look at your life. You've got a yacht and a plane. Why would you do that? Because the same wiring that was there when they started their journey, it's still there. And believe it or not, people start to mess with their success to give themselves something to grind against, something else to fix. Because, I mean, what do you do when it's all perfect? You're kind of screwed. And I know many people are listening to what I'm saying right now, and they're saying to themselves, well, I'd like to find that when it's all perfect. I get that. But the evidence for people screwing with their lives after they've accomplished great things is really quite overwhelming. Because the ones that drift off into the sunset to a life of bliss, it's not like they don't exist, but they are the exceptions that prove the rule.
Well, basically what you just said is tied up in your book here. It says stop doing all the stuff that you know you shouldn't be doing and start doing the stuff that you know you should be doing. I mean, that's kind of what you just said in a nutshell.
Yeah, and you know what? If like, I have this thing that I often say to people, I say, look, your success in life is almost exclusively tied to the degree that you can keep a promise to yourself. So whatever the degree is, you can keep. Now, most people are like, no, I can keep promises to myself. Well, look again, though. Like, look at the job you're in, the degree you got, your body, your finances. Those are your promises right there. Where you told yourself, I'm gonna, and then somewhere along the way you changed it because the other thing was easier. Now, keeping a promise to yourself is saying, I'm going to make $500 between now and next Monday night, and I've no idea how I'm going to do it, but it's on like Donkey Kong, and then I somehow do it. I give myself fully to that, and then I'm like, wow, I did it. And if you actually ask a person, they have examples of that in their life where they did something they actually didn't think they could. There was something that kept them going, but they did it. And I say to human beings, those opportunities are strewn across your life where you could actually give your word to something, and your job now is handling everything that you need to handle to deliver on that thing. There are no obstacles, just things that now require handling that didn't require handling before I said I was going to do it. So I'm a little bold in my declarations. I say what I'm going to do, because it gives me something to play against. It gives me like, okay, now I've got some big problems. Like, how am I going to do that? I'm not intimidated by the problems because everything's got a solution. And I really mean that. Like, everything's got a solution. The question is, are you willing to do the thinking to solve it? And I embrace problems. I embrace the things that don't work.
Well, let me go back, because you said, are you willing to do the thinking to solve that problem? You mentioned earlier that you contemplate things sometimes for 6 months. How do you know when to execute the thought that's been in your mind for the last 6 months?
Yeah, it's not like, I don't look at it in terms of execution. When I do something like that, which I call an inquiry, so I'm in the inquiry of confidence, for instance, I just let it inform me. Like, it informs me. It's like, and then so when it comes time for me to step out there and do the next thing, and I see, oh, yeah, I don't feel very good about doing this thing, then I'm getting informed by that whole thing that I was in the inquiry of. So what I do, I wouldn't recommend that to people. I wouldn't recommend it to people who spend 6 months of their life in the inquiry or something. You're too busy. That is what my life's about. That is why I write books and courses and, and coach people, because that's kind of my field. It's what I do. But I would say to people, look, if you're going to read a personal growth book or you're going to read anything in personal development, rather than sitting there reading it and coming to some opinion about it, and I mean any book, right? Because you could get any book can change your life if you're open to the suggestion that it could, right? And I really mean any book can change your life. Go read Cat in the Hat, and it could change your life, because you got to be willing to sit with it and think about it and question yourself. And I really mean question yourself, not like read the book and find agreement, which is how most people read a book. They're looking for it to ring a bell. But to rather look at the book for how it might inform you. How does it speak to me? What am I missing here? What does that word really mean to me? And you'll find that just about any book could inform you in such a way that it could change the very next thing you're going to do. And that's why I do what I do. It's why I stay in those kind of inquiries and do that kind of thinking, so that you don't have to, and I can present it to you in such a way that you might be able to come to a much quicker action than having to sit and stew in it for 6 months.
Gary John Bishop wrote the book UnF Yourself. What's the first step, Gary, to basically uneffing ourselves?
Yeah, it's practicing your promises. So it begins with stupid little things like, every day for the next week, I'm going to get up on the first ring of the alarm, doing it. And building the muscle for keeping a promise to yourself is the first step. And the better you get at keeping promises to yourself, you'll start to see more things as possible for you. But when you don't keep promises to yourself, you end up with this growing relationship to what you say, like you're full of it.
Where do we find UnF Yourself?
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, lots and lots of independent bookstores across the country. It's actually an international book. It's in lots and lots of countries, but any major bookstore in the United States, you can get it, and Canada. And then also you can get it on audible.com. You can get the audio version, because it's a very punchy, in-your-face, quick and dirty book. Right? When I say dirty, I just mean it gets into the dirt of your life. I don't mean there's a lot of profanity in it. I think there might be 2 expletives in the whole book. But you can also get the audio version of it, and it's I narrate the audio book myself, and the audio book's done great. Actually, I think it's number 4 or 5 on the audible.com list, so it's done pretty well.
That's awesome. What about more information about you, Gary?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, garyjohnbishop.com, so you're going to see the UnF Yourself series of courses that I'm offering people that they can use in conjunction with a book. And it literally is about yourself, and then there's another course about your relationships. And then there's another course that's going to be coming out at the end of the first quarter next year about your purpose, like what are you using your life for? And those will be real. I'm committed as many people can get this work as possible. So I'm not into charging people $1,000 for a course or something. It just doesn't work. I'm not interested in making it available to the few. I'm interested in making it available to the many. And you can do my courses. You can buy the books. You can sign up for what I call the UnF Nation and become a national and get blog pieces and videos and all kinds of cool stuff for free.
That's great. At GaryJohnBishop.com. So are you glad you named the book UnF Yourself?
I mean, I'm I don't know if I'm glad about it. I think it was enough to kind of have people look, but the content of the book is what's really got people going. And I know that name kind of pisses some people off and they don't like it, and I appreciate that and I get that. But, if you can't read a book because of the title, then you maybe really need to UnF yourself a bit.
The BSing with Bob Schmidt podcast is brought to you by Orange Computer. Find them online at orangecomputerlax.com.
This has been another podcastforhire.com production.